off Interstate 80. I work the night shift at a gas station off a quiet interstate. The kind of place where hours drag on with nothing but the hum of fluorescent lights and the rare semi-truck driver stopping for fuel. It's just me, a small convenience store, and a few pumps outside. The job is dull, but it covers the bills, and I've grown accustomed to the quiet. Most nights, I restock shelves, glance at the security screens, and count down to dawn. But one night, everything shifted into something darker. It was around 2 in the morning, and I hadn't seen a soul for hours. The store was eerily still, just the low drone of the fridge in the rear. I was behind the counter, leafing through an old newspaper when the chime above the door rang. I looked up, expecting a weary traveler, but instead, a man entered. He was lanky, dressed in a faded denim jacket pulled tight around his frame. His hands were buried in his pockets, and he moved with a deliberate slowness, as if scanning every shadow. My gut clenched. Something about him felt wrong, like the air around him carried a chill that didn't belong. "Hey, welcome," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Need help with anything?" He didn't reply. He just drifted down the candy aisle, his head cocked slightly, as if attuned to whispers only he could hear. I peeked at the security monitor. His image showed him paused, facing the lens, but his features were obscured by the jacket's collar. My pulse quickened. I told myself he was just another odd late-night visitor. It happens out here on the edge of nowhere. I occupied myself polishing the counter, keeping him in my peripheral vision. He picked up a candy bar but didn't head to the register. Instead, he lingered near the fridges, standing motionless. Minutes ticked by. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. The silence grew oppressive, interrupted only by the faint buzz of the lights, which seemed to flicker more than usual, casting elongated shadows that danced unnaturally on the walls. I cleared my throat. "Sir, ready to check out?" I called, my words echoing louder than intended. He turned his head gradually, as if emerging from a trance. "Not yet," he murmured, his voice deep and gravelly, like it echoed from a distant cave. He remained rooted, clutching the candy, gazing at the floor. I forced a grin. "All right, take your time." My palms were slick. I had the phone beneath the counter. The authorities were a dial away, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. He hadn't done anything amiss. Not yet. I checked the monitor once more. He had vanished from the view. My breath snagged. I leaned in, scanning the other feeds. Empty aisles. My gaze shot to the door. The chime hadn't sounded. He was still inside. I seized the tire iron we kept under the counter for protection. My supervisor had pointed it out on my first shift, half in jest. But now, it felt like a ward against the unknown. I stepped from behind the counter, gripping it firmly. "Sir," I called, my tone wavering. No response. I advanced toward the aisles, my boots squeaking on the linoleum. The store felt vast, too hushed, with shadows that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. I peered down the candy aisle, empty. The fridge aisle, empty. My heart thundered so loudly it drowned out the hum. I pivoted toward the restroom in the back, the only spot unchecked. The door was ajar, the light off, darkness spilling out like ink. I tightened my hold on the iron and nudged the door with my foot. It groaned open. Nothing but void. I switched on the light, empty. I exhaled shakily and turned back to the store. That's when I saw him. He was at the counter, right where I'd stood, holding the candy bar. His jacket was still zipped high, his face veiled in shadow. I halted. He couldn't have reached there without me noticing. The chime hadn't rung. The cameras hadn't captured his movement. "You all right?" he asked, his tone even, almost taunting. He inclined his head, and I glimpsed closed his eyes, dark, unblinking, like voids that pulled at my soul, whispering forgotten fears. Yeah, I fibbed, edging back to the counter, the iron still in hand. Just inspecting the place. Ready to pay? He didn't stir. You alone here? He inquired, his voice soft yet laden, like it bore an ancient curse. My mouth parched. My partner's in the back, I claimed, hoping it rang true. There was no partner. It was just me until 6 in the morning. He nodded languidly, as if sensing the lie. Must get isolating, he remarked, placing the candy on the counter. His motion was slow, purposeful, and I caught a glint of something ethereal in his pocket, a shimmer that didn't reflect light properly, like a relic from another realm. My stomach plummeted. I compelled myself to remain composed, ringing up the candy with quivering hands. That's $2.49, I said, my voice scarcely firm. He delved into his pocket, and I braced, prepared to swing the iron. But he extracted a wrinkled $5 bill and pushed it across. His fingers were elongated, pallid, and marked with grime that seemed to ride faintly. I snatched the bill, evading contact, and rummaged for change. He didn't accept it. He just lingered, staring. Keep it, he uttered, retrieving the candy. He headed for the door but paused, glancing back. You should secure the door at night. Never know what's lurking out there, things that watch from the edges of reality. My blood chilled. He exited, the chime tinkling as the door closed. I dashed to the door and bolted it, my hands quaking. Through the glass, I observed him walk to the lot's fringe, where a weathered van idled. He didn't enter. He just stood, facing the store, his form silhouetted against the night, as if communing with unseen forces. I seized the phone and called 911, my voice trembling as I described the man, the van, his eerie demeanor. They promised a patrol, but it would take 20 minutes. The interstate was too remote. I clutched the iron and monitored the screens. The van stayed put. He stayed put. Then the power wavered. The lights hummed, dimmed, and revived. My heart ceased. I rechecked the screens. The van remained, but he had disappeared. I scoured every angle, nothing. The chime hadn't sounded. The door stayed locked. I retreated from the counter, iron in hand, eyes scanning every nook. The fridges droned. The lights buzzed, now with a rhythmic pulse that mimicked breathing. Then I heard it, a soft scrape, like claws on tile, emanating from the rear. My breath faltered. I yearned to flee, but the sole exit was the front, and his van loomed. Sir, I called, my voice a mere whisper. No reply. The scrape repeated, nearer, from the storage area. I inched toward the door, iron lifted, my heart slamming. I thrust the door open. The storage was dim, the lone bulb flickering erratically, shadows twisting like tormented spirits. Crates piled high, casting elongated forms that seemed to reach out. I entered, my boots silent on the concrete. Then I spotted it, a flicker of motion behind a crate stack. I swung the iron, striking air. A can tumbled across the floor, rattling. I froze, breath shallow. Who's there? I demanded louder. No answer, but I detected respiration, slow, labored, from the corner, accompanied by a faint whisper, like voices from a dream long buried. I reversed, my back colliding with the wall. The lights flickered again, and for a split second, I beheld him in the gloom, jacket high, eyes fixed on mine. He didn't advance. He didn't utter. He just gazed, his presence radiating an otherworldly cold. I fled for the door, slamming it shut. I snatched the phone anew, hands so unsteady I could scarcely dial. The operator said the police were 5 minutes away. I barricaded myself in the tiny office behind the counter, iron clutched, watching the screens. The van persisted. The storage camera displayed only static, flickering with ghostly outlines. I waited, each second eternal. The lights wavered once more, screens darkening. My heart lodged in my throat. I heard the scrape again, closer, right beyond the office door. I gripped the iron, tears blurring my vision, murmuring to myself, "Just stay calm. Just stay calm." Then the door handle rattled. Slow initially, then quicker, as if something tested it. I held my breath, poised to strike. The rattling ceased. Silence. Then a deep, gravelly voice seeped through the door. "You should have secured the back door." My blood iced. I hadn't verified the back door. The storage had a loading entrance. I'd overlooked locking it. I longed to scream, but my voice vanished. The handle rattled again, fiercer. I retreated into the corner, iron quivering. Then sirens wailed. Red and blue lights pierced the windows. The rattling halted. I heard footsteps, swift, receding. I remained in the office, too terrified to stir, until the police pounded on the door. They scoured the store, the storage, the lot. The van had vanished. The back door gaped open. They discovered the candy bar on the storage floor, untouched, beside a rusted talisman that pulsed with faint, unnatural light. The police claimed I was fortunate. They'd encountered drifters like him before, preying on isolated stations. They never apprehended him. I resigned the next day. I couldn't return. Every time I shut my eyes, I see his form in the shadows, hear his voice through the door, and ponder what would have transpired if the police hadn't arrived, perhaps pulled into a mystic abyss that lingers just beyond sight. The figure at Pump 4. I worked the night shift at a small gas station off a lonely interstate in a remote town. It's a weathered spot with 3 rusty pumps outside, a convenience store illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights, and a cramped back room with a fold-out chair and a dim lamp. The air reeks of old coffee and gasoline, and the counter is scarred from decades of wear. I took the job to pay the rent, but the isolation wears on me. Most nights, it's just me, the whir of the fridge, and a staticky radio tuning into classic rock. I keep a lantern under the counter and a basic microwave in the corner for those long stretches. Last night, though, I wish I'd stayed home. It was 10 at night when I began my shift. I secured the door behind me, turned the open sign, and inspected the till. The money drawer jammed as usual, and I had to pry it open. I replenished the snack section, the rustle of wrappers echoing in the vacant store, and cleaned the counter, wiping away smudges of dust. The radio played quietly, a tune about endless roads, and I settled onto my stool, browsing my phone. The parking area outside was pitch black, the pumps faintly glowing under their steel covers. No vehicles, no folks, just the void. Around 12:30 in the morning, the chime above the door tinkled, abrupt and jarring. I glanced up, and my stomach sank. A tall, gaunt figure shuffled in, his shoes scraping the floor. His plaid shirt was ripped, blotched with dark stains, blood, I realized, my throat constricting. His hands were worse, coated in crimson, with soil embedded under his nails. His complexion was ashen, nearly spectral, and his eyes were dilated, scanning as if hunting for phantoms. He seized a soda from the fridge, the door slamming shut, and approached the counter. "Evening," I uttered, my tone unsteady. I compelled my hands to remain still as I arranged some flyers. "Just the soda?" He nodded, fixated on the counter, not me. His digits twitched as he pulled a rumpled $5 bill from his pocket. The bill was moist, leaving a subtle red mark on my skin when I accepted it. I rang up the soda, the beep resounding in the hush, my heart racing. "That's $2.50, I said, attempting a smile. My lips felt rigid. He pushed the bill over, his hand quivering. I spotted a gash on his knuckle, fresh and seeping. I gave him his change, coins jingling in my unsteady palm. He looked up then, his gaze piercing mine, red-veined and unwavering. "Don't fret," he murmured, his voice low, hoarse, as if he'd been wailing to the void. "It's not my blood." My breath halted. I parted my lips, but words failed. He pivoted, his shoes squealing, and departed, the chime ringing. I hurried to the window, observing him fade beyond the pumps into the obscurity. No vehicle, no noise, just evaporated. My palms were damp, and his words reverberated in my mind, laced with an unearthly echo. I double-checked the door lock, fingers clumsy, and tried focusing on the radio, but the melody now distorted, too ominous. By 1:30 in the morning, I was still on edge. I kept peering at the windows, anticipating his visage against the pane, eyes glowing faintly. That's when I noticed a silhouette at pump number 4. He loomed by a dilapidated pickup, its body dented and windows obscured. He wasn't fueling, wasn't on his phone, just standing, gazing directly at the store, at me. He wore a parka, the hood drawn, shrouding his features. His stance was peculiar, rigid like a sentinel from old tales. His head tilted subtly, and I swear his eyes captured the pump's glow, shimmering like a beast's in the night. I leaned nearer to the window, my exhalation misting the glass. He didn't budge. My flesh tingled, and I grasped the speaker mic, my thumb slick on the switch. "Hey, need assistance out there?" I announced, my voice booming outside. No reaction. He just persisted staring, his head tilting further, almost impossibly. I tried again, louder. "Restroom key or anything else?" Nothing. 5 minutes elapsed, then 10, then 15. He didn't shift, his stare unrelenting. I paced behind the counter, my boots squeaking on the floor. The till display shone dimly, indicating 1:45 in the morning. I contemplated calling the law, but what to report? A man lingering, unnerving me with an aura that felt supernatural. I seized a marker and began sketching on a napkin, attempting to soothe, but my hands trembled, creating twisted forms that seemed to move on their own. By 2 in the morning, he had vanished. The pickup remained, angled oddly, but the man had dissolved. I examined the security monitor, a blurry monochrome display in the corner. It revealed only the barren lot. I exhaled unsteadily, my shoulders easing, but my heart still pounded. I convinced myself he'd wandered off, perhaps to another stop, but the quiet now felt denser, as if concealing entities from beyond. At 2:30 in the morning, I heard a soft buzz, like a drone or a faint engine. I looked out and saw a form circling the lot on a rickety bike, its motor stuttering. He donned a black coat and a helmet, the visor lowered, concealing his face. He decelerated near the entrance, revving the engine noisily, then accelerated and looped again. My chest constricted. I clutched the counter, watching him circle nearer each pass. He halted directly outside the door, his bike idling with a guttural rumble that echoed like distant thunder. He dismounted, motions jerky, and tugged the door handle. The glass shuddered fiercely, the lock straining. "Hey!" I yelled, retreating, my voice fracturing. "We're shut for walk-ins after midnight." He didn't respond. He yanked again, harder, the frame groaning. I stumbled back, my side striking the counter, toppling a rack of mints. He pressed his helmet to the glass, the visor mirroring the store's lights like an abyss. I couldn't see his eyes, but I sensed them, frigid, burdensome, whispering silent curses. Then he turned, remounted his bike, and raced off, the buzz fading into the night. I was quaking, my breath short gasps. I grabbed my phone, fingers awkward, and nearly called 911. But I paused. What if he returned? What if he observed from the shadows? I rechecked the locks, palms sweaty, and retreated to the back room, sealing the door. The chair reeked of mildew, and the lone lamp flickered, casting shades on the brick walls that twisted like grasping hands. I sat there, phone clutched, trying to steady my breath. At 3 in the morning, the lights extinguished. The entire station plunged into blackness, the fridges were ceasing, the radio silencing mid-tune. My heart surged. I groped for the lantern under the counter, dropping it twice before igniting it. The beam trembled as I aimed it at the windows, the glass reflecting the light back. Then I saw them. 2 silhouettes outside the windows, the blood-stained figure and the staring one from the pump. They weren't moving, just lingering, faces against the glass. The blood-stained one's eyes were feral, lips curved into a faint, warped grin. Blood smeared the pane where his hands pressed, leaving trails that seemed to slither. The other ones had remained up, head tilted at that unnatural angle, eyes gleaming in the lantern's ray like spectral orbs. My knees weakened, and I dropped the lantern, the beam whirling across the floor. I scrambled to the back room, boots slipping on the linoleum. I bolted the door, hands so unsteady I could hardly turn the latch. I crouched in the corner beside the chair, phone to my chest. Thumps resounded from the store, slow, intentional bangs on the glass, accompanied by whispers that seeped through the cracks, murmuring my name in tongues unknown. Then scratching, like talons dragging across the window. My gut churned, and I bit my lip to stifle a cry. The banging halted, but footsteps commenced, heavy, irregular, encircling the building. They crunched on the gravel, sluggish and deliberate, as if seeking an entry, with echoes that hinted at more than one presence. I dialed 911, fingers shaking so much I erred twice. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice was serene. Too serene. Someone's attempting to enter the gas station, I whispered, voice barely audible. 2 men outside, pounding on the door, one coated in blood. Stay calm, she instructed. Where are you? Back room, I replied, teeth chattering. Please dispatch help swiftly. Officers en route, she said. Remain there. Keep the line open. I huddled, phone to ear, attuned to every noise. The footsteps ceased, then resumed, nearer, by the back door. Something scraped against it, metal on metal, like a blade or claw, with a hiss that carried mystic malice. My breath snagged, and I covered my mouth, fearing they'd detect me. The operator's voice was a distant murmur, urging calm, but my heart thumped so loudly I scarcely heard. Minutes dragged, infinite. The scraping halted, and the quiet was worse, pregnant with unseen horrors. I kept the lantern off, lest the glow slip under the door. My legs cramped from huddling, but I stayed still. I kept envisioning their faces, the blood-stained one's smirk, the hooded one's tilted gaze, now infused with supernatural hunger. Finally, sirens echoed, faint then louder. Red and blue lights flashed through the gaps, tinting the walls. I remained crouched, body rigid, until a loud knock rattled the door. Police, anyone inside? A resonant voice called. I staggered to my feet, legs wobbly, and opened. 2 officers entered, their beams sweeping the dark. One was sturdy, with a grave expression and hand on his sidearm. The other younger, eyes wide, gripping his light like a talisman. You okay? The sturdy one queried, tone rough. I nodded, throat too tight for words. They were outside, I managed. 2 men, one had blood, the other staring. They combed the lot, boots crunching gravel. The younger checked the security monitor, but the outage had erased the feed. The sturdy one reset the breaker, lights flickering on, stark and bright. They found nothing. No pickup, no bike, no blood on the windows. No trace. Breaker tripped, the sturdy officer remarked, brow furrowed. Could have been a surge. Sure about what you saw? I'm certain, I said, voice quaking. They were there, pressing the glass. The younger glanced at the windows, face pale. We'll log a report, he said. Got someone to take your shift? Yeah, I replied, hands still trembling. I'm finished here. I quit that night. I grabbed my coat, left the keys on the counter, and walked out, the chime ringing one last time. The cops offered a ride home, but I just wanted distance. I keep seeing their forms, the blood-stained one's wild eyes, the hooded one's gleaming stare, now whispering in my dreams of eternal watch. I don't know what they were or what they sought, but I sensed them still out there, observing, waiting for another solitary night. 2 in the morning. I've been working the night shift at this gas station for 6 months. It's a small, run-down spot on the outskirts of town, nestled between a shadowy stretch of highway and a tangle of overgrown brush. The fluorescent lights buzz incessantly, flickering every few hours, casting wavering shadows on the worn linoleum floor. The air carries the scent of stale coffee and engine oil, and the old radio behind the counter hisses with interference, barely catching the local blues station. I spend most nights alone, processing sales of sodas, tobacco, and fuel for haulers or midnight wanderers. There's a small screen mounted in the corner, but the signal's so poor it's mostly static, with ghostly images flickering through. I keep a tattered novel or a puzzle book to fill the time, appreciating the solitude. But last week, that solitude twisted into something I'll never erase. It began with a frequent visitor I called Harlan. He's in his late 40s with a rugged face, deep creases around his lips, and eyes perpetually rimmed in red, as if sleep evaded him. His canvas coat is frayed at the edges, and his shoes are crusted with mud, like he's traversed cursed grounds. He'd arrive around 2 in the morning most nights, always purchasing the same, dark tea in a foam cup and a box of generics. He'd chat lightly about fuel costs or how dragging the nights were, and I'd respond, glad for the fleeting interaction. He appeared benign, just another drifting spirit. But 2 weeks ago, something altered, infused with a mystic unease. That initial night, the chime jingled, and I looked up from reorganizing the gum rack. Harlan entered, but his gait was sluggish, weighted, as if pulled by invisible threads. His hands were deep in his pockets, and he didn't approach the teapot as usual. Instead, he hovered near the cracker display, gazing at it without contact. The quiet extended, broken only by the fridge's hum, now laced with faint, indistinct murmurs. I stood, wiping my hands on my vest, my instinct alerting me to the shift. "Everything all right, Harlan?" I inquired, tone amicable, though my heartbeat accelerated. He turned his head slowly, eyes fixing on mine. They were dilated, unblinking, like portals to shadowed realms. "You shouldn't be here solitary," he uttered, voice low and guttural, almost a sigh from the ether. My insides knotted, a chill sweat on my nape. I forced a smile, acting normal. "Just fulfilling my role," I said, stepping behind the counter, the scarred barrier between us. He didn't budge, just continued staring, hands pocketed. After an eternity, he shuffled to the tea machine, poured as usual, and grabbed his smokes. He slid precise change across, fingers grazing the register's edge. I watched him exit, his outline melting into the night beyond the pumps. My heart raced, but I assured myself he was merely fatigued, perhaps troubled. The next night, he returned. Same hour, same ponderous steps. I was cleaning the counter with a moist cloth, the scent of sanitizer sharp. The radio played some vintage blues, but it faded sporadically. The chime sounded, and Harlan entered, his coat loose on his frame. This time, no tea. He roamed the aisles, lifting random goods, a pack of nuts, a cheap keychain, a tin of mints, then replacing them with measured, ritualistic motions. Every few moments, his head swiveled toward me, eyes meeting mine before I averted. My hands clenched the cloth, throat arid. "Seeking something particular?" I called, striving for casual, though my voice cracked. He paused mid-aisle, holding a tin of soda, fingers drumming against the metal in a pattern that echoed like a summons. "They're observing me," he declared, not glancing my way. "They're always observing." His tone was monotone, as if discussing weather, but carrying an unearthly weight. My skin prickled, and I glanced at the security monitor, its fuzzy display showing empty aisles and lot, yet shadows seemed to shift subtly. "Who's observing?" I asked, voice a whisper. I didn't truly desire knowledge, but the hush was tormenting. He didn't respond. He placed the tin back with a gentle clink and departed, the chime jangling sharply. I rushed to the door and locked it, hands quivering. I wasn't meant to bolt until close, but protocol be damned. I grabbed the phone under the counter and called my supervisor, fingers stumbling over keys. No answer, voicemail. I disconnected, breath ragged, convincing myself Harlan was odd, perhaps influenced. But his unblinking gaze lingered in my thoughts all night, whispering doubts. Over the ensuing nights, it worsened. Harlan appeared every shift, always around 2 or 3 in the morning. He'd loiter longer each visit, pacing aisles or standing by the tea machine, murmuring to himself. I caught snippets, they know we're not secure. His face paled progressively, eyes more hollow, as if drained by spectral forces. I began keeping the crowbar we had under the counter nearer, fingers tracing its cold metal whenever he entered. I inspected locks obsessively, ensured the back door was barred, and kept my phone pocketed, ready for emergency. One night, I was refilling the fridge, chill air nipping my arms as I arranged drinks. The chime rang, heart dropping. Harlan entered, shoes louder, as if announcing to hidden listeners. He didn't roam this time. He headed straight to the counter, leaning over, palms flat on the barrier. I rose slowly, mouth dry, the bottle of water in hand forgotten. "You ever sense you're not secure?" he queried, voice so faint I strained. His breath reeked of old smoke and something decayed, like earth from a grave. His eyes locked mine, and I noted his hands quivering faintly, knuckles pale. His nails dug into the surface, leaving faint scratches that seemed to glow briefly. "I'm okay," I replied, voice shaking. I retreated, bumping the rack behind. "Need anything tonight, Harlan?" He leaned nearer, face inches from the barrier. "I know secrets about you," he intoned, slow and deliberate. "Secrets you don't want revealed," whispers from the beyond. My blood froze. I had no clue what he meant. My existence was mundane, work and home. But his delivery, as if he'd been communing with spirits watching me, churned my gut. "Please, just state what you want," I stammered, hand inching toward the alarm button under the counter, concealed behind flyers. He grinned, a slow, skewed grin that missed his eyes. Then, before reaction, he reached over and seized my wrist. His grasp was vice-like, fingers icy and coarse. I gasped, yanking back, but he held, eyes unwavering. "Don't yell," he soothed, tone almost gentle. "I don't wish to harm you." "Not yet," the shadows decide. I wrenched free, heart slamming ribs. "Get out," I commanded, voice trembling yet loud. "Get out now." He regarded me long, grin fading. Then he turned and left, the chime mocking normalcy. I locked the door, hands so shaky I fumbled the key. I hit the alarm, sank behind the counter, and hugged knees, breaths labored. The police arrived in 10 minutes, beams sweeping the lot. I recounted all, Harlan's words, grasp, eyes. They noted, vowed pursuit, but their demeanor suggested just eccentricity, not peril. They didn't locate him that night. I nearly quit, but expenses loomed, couldn't afford departure. So, I returned, vowing vigilance. I kept the door locked unless a pump user, scanned cameras every minute, ensured back door secure. I parked my car nearer the entrance for quick escape. But nothing braced me for last night. It was 3 in the morning, sorting papers. The radio played a faint melody unrecognized. The store deathly quiet, only light buzz, now with whispers woven in. Then a thud against the front door. Head snapped up, Harlan, face to glass, breath fogging. Eyes feral, mouth twisted grin. He pounded again, frame shaking. "Let me in," he bellowed, voice rough through pain. Heart stopped. Door locked, but fragile, one kick might shatter. I ducked behind counter, hands fumbling phone. Another thud, louder, glass rattling. "I know you're there," he yelled. I peeked, breath catching. He held a blade, tapping glass, metal glinting under lights like a cursed artifact. "You can't conceal," he said, tone dropping eerie calm. "I just want to converse with the voices." He paced front, blade loose, eyes scanning windows for weakness. I pressed alarm, fingers trembling twice. Breath loud, vision tear-blurred. I grabbed crowbar, clutching chest, palm slick. Banging stopped, thought gone. Then new sound, rattle at back door. Stomach dropped. Forgot double-check tonight. I crept back, crowbar raised, heart pounding faint. Rattle turned bang, like shoulder slamming. Metal groaned, imagined yielding, Harlan entering with blade. I backed, eyes darting doors. Another bang, silence. Front rattled harder. Realized circling, testing entries, footsteps echoing with mystic chorus. Legs weak, stayed low, to counter, whispering, "Stay calm. Stay calm." But voice shook, crowbar useless. Then headlights flashed, bright sudden. Siren wailed, louder. Heard Harlan shout, voice sharp, then boots crunching gravel, fleeing. I stayed crouched, scared stir, until cop's voice cut silence. "Police, open door." I crawled front, hands shaking on lock. 2 officers entered, radios buzzing. I spilled everything, words tumbling. They searched lot, pumps, alley. Harlan gone, but found his bike mile down, ditched in brush. Blade inside, etched with strange symbols. Said record, harassment, trespass, mental holds. Not supposed to have weapon. Promised search, faces doubtful find. Haven't returned station. Can't. Every eye close, see Harlan's face glass. Hear voice say knows secrets. Keep lights on home. Check locks 3 times bed. Seeking new job, office, day people. Used think night shifts peaceful, chance alone thoughts. Now no truth. Some terrors need no shadows ghosts scare. Need someone like Harlan, waiting dark, perhaps vessel for ancient evils.